All right, let's dive into something that I think a lot of you are going to connect with. We're calling it the Confluent Mission. It's this whole new way of looking at what it means to speak English, especially if you're one of those people who, knows the language but just can't seem to use it. Sound familiar? Let's get into it.
So let me ask you this. Do you know English, but when it comes time to speak, you feel, scared? I mean, you've done the work, right? You've studied the grammar, you have a ton of vocabulary, you can read an article, no problem. But then that moment comes, the moment you have to actually speak, and poof, something just freezes you up. It is so frustrating, but believe me, you are not the only one feeling this, not by a long shot.
Well, this huge gap between what you know and what you can do, we're going to call it the English learning trap. It's that awful sinking feeling of being totally stuck. You know in your head that you should be able to speak confidently, but when you open your mouth, nothing. The words just aren't there. But here's the good news, okay? It's a trap, and like any trap, there is a way out.
And this is what that trap really feels like, day to day. You're in a work meeting, right? Or maybe you just bump into a native speaker, and your mind, it just goes completely blank. You start hesitating, overthinking every single word, trying to make it perfect, and by the time you're ready, the conversation has already moved on without you. That feeling, right there, that freezing, that's what we're here to fix.
So, for a lot of us, that word fluent feels impossible, right? It feels like this mountain you can never quite climb. So you know what? Let's just set that aside for a second and introduce a new goal. A better, more powerful goal. Let's forget about being perfect. The real aim here is to become confluent. It's a completely new way to think about your journey.
Okay, so what on earth does confluent actually mean? Look, it is not about having perfect grammar. It's not about having a flawless accent. It's about being fearless. It's about being self-driven. It's all about being able to get your ideas out of your head and into the world, clearly, without that little voice in your head screaming at you to stop.
It really boils down to 3 core pillars. First up, confidence. This is all about not waiting for an invitation. You see a conversation happening, you jump in. Simple as that. Second, fluency. This is where your ideas just flow. They go from your brain to your mouth without all that painful overthinking. And third, and this one is so important, independence. This is where you take the wheel. You're not just a passenger in some language class anymore. You are the one driving your own progress.
And I love this way of thinking about it. Confidence, that's the spark that lights the fire. Fluency, that's the muscle. You got to work it out, build it up through practice so speaking becomes second nature. But independence, that's the real prize. That's the freedom to speak, to learn, to improve completely on your own terms, whenever you want, wherever you are.
Okay, so if this is the goal, why does so many of us feel so stuck? I mean, you've probably been learning for years, right? What's missing? What are the secret ingredients? Well, I'm going to let you in on something. The reason you feel stuck, it's probably not what you think it is.
This slide right here is the big aha moment. We always assume the problem is that we don't know enough. We think, I just need more vocabulary or I need more grammar, but that's not it. The real problem is a lack of practice, a lack of useful feedback, and maybe the biggest one of all, a lack of belief in yourself. See, it's not a knowledge gap you have, it's a performance gap.
So, how do we close that performance gap? If the real issue is practice and belief, we need a tool that hits those 2 things head on. And this is where new ways of practicing come into play. And honestly, one of the most powerful tools we have for this right now is AI.
And please, get this, because it's a huge mental shift. This whole mission isn't about stuffing more English facts into your brain. It's about teaching you how to practice speaking. Think of it like a gym for your mouth. It's a training program to build that speaking muscle, not just another dusty library of information.
So let's get practical. How does something like AI actually help build these pillars? Well, for confidence, it's huge. When you practice with an AI, there is zero judgment. Zero. You can mess up, you can repeat yourself 100 times, you can try out weird phrases, and no one cares. It's your own private rehearsal space. Then for fluency, it's all about reps. An AI can throw endless conversation topics at you, forcing you to think on your feet, just like in the real world. And finally, independence. This right here is the game changer. You learn how to be your own coach. You become this self-sufficient learner who doesn't need to wait for their 1 class a week to get better.
And when you put all that together, where does it lead?
It leads to one simple, but honestly, pretty radical end goal: your linguistic independence. The ability to finally stand on your own 2 feet as an English speaker, totally in control of your voice and your own journey forward.
This is the promise. I want you to think back to that feeling we talked about at the start, that freezing up, watching the conversation just drift away from you. The entire point of becoming Confluent is to make sure that feeling never happens again, to make sure you never feel stuck or dependent or silent when you've got something important to say.
So, I'm going to leave you with one last question to think about. And I mean really think about it. If you were completely fearless, if all that hesitation just vanished, what would you say? What ideas would you share with the world? Who would you connect with? That, right there, that is the future that becoming Confluent makes possible.